Hi, everyone. Welcome to my talk, The Shrinking Gap Between Mobile and PC, and other tips for releasing core titles on Steam. So today's session will be roughly 20 minutes, divided in 5 chapters. First, a quick look at the agenda here. So I'll talk a bit about myself, why I'm doing this talk now, how player behavior evolved and changed over time, how can we apply this behavioral evolution to our business strategy, and I will end up with a few philosophical takeaways. All right, so let's start with the intro. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexis Argyriou. I've been building games professionally for a bit over 15 years now. I worked at a few game companies in Eastern Europe. I was a manager at Ubisoft in France. I was a creative director at NetEase in China. And I was overseeing about a dozen game studios across the world for Tencent as a game operations director. Now I'm running The Bureau. It's a boutique consulting firm working with publishers and investors. We operate out of Singapore and we work with both Asian and European teams. But we actually just started working with a US investor a few weeks ago. So we mostly perform due diligence, scouting, help studios in needs. We can zoom out to understand investors and publishers and fix strategic issues with studios. So we can be also very hands-on to fix like game design or production issues. So why am I doing this talk? Because I believe that we are arriving at a convergence of mobile and PC gaming markets. So this convergence of PC and mobile was so powerful that it really created an entire new generation of studios, like some heavyweights that took the industry by storms, but also some smaller artistic studios that revolutionized genres. And in this changing landscape, China is leading the charge. No one really does cross-platform better than Chinese studios today. It's really the default mode of release for Chinese studios, and I think that's believed the main reason they achieve such market penetration globally. So why is it happening now? Because mobile games have been around for like 2 decades, console games for like half a century, if you don't feel old yet. And there's been new disruption in the form of player expectations, a critical shift that enable cross-platform games at scale. And actually, I keep saying cross-platform, but this word is really disappearing. We see fewer and fewer exclusivities, both in the mobile and the console PC landscape, and we're seeing the death of platforms, really. There's no PC player anymore. All PC players are also mobile players, because today it really doesn't matter what you play on. And you don't have to believe me. You can hear it from Phil Spencer, the CEO of Microsoft Gaming. He kept saying, like since last year, I think, that every screen is an Xbox. But if every screen is an Xbox, then really is there an Xbox? And it's really all thanks to this digital native generation. Those digital native kids, they grew up with a smartphone in their hands, with a laptop at home. To them, a screen is a screen. And like you heard it from the man, if everything is a screen, then everything is an Xbox. And they couldn't care less what version of iOS it's running. The only question that kids will have for you is, do you have any games on this? Can it play Roblox, right? So most young players discovered gaming through mobile, and most of them actually play games that are available on all platforms, like Fortnite, for example. And now, why do I think that it matters for mid-core and hardcore games? Because like any entertainment or any sports, as the kids get better at something, and if they can, they will want the maximum experience out of their favorite game. The ones who can afford to get the maximum experience are usually the ones who can spend a lot of money. So PUBG, Roblox, Minecraft, all were massive drivers of this new audience that grew up with mobile games and transitioned to PC and console. And another key factor driving this convergence, we never had such powerful hardware at our fingertips. In theory, you could make a game the scale of GTA 5 run on an iPhone. Like the iPhone 16 Pro is double the power of an Xbox One in most metrics. And the tools are there too. Like we're well into the era of cross-platform engines and software. So you make it once, you build it a few times, and then you can play anywhere. So as I said, this new audience that grew up with mobile gaming created some changes in the player expectations and behaviors. So it means that adapting our business strategy. If we have, following the industry news, most big players have been really terrible at adapting their business strategy lately, because they're big ships, right? They're very hard to steer with an angle of turn that takes them years to adapt to these changes. But those that ride those stormy seas, you must be agile, resilient. You need to understand the waves and really be focused on your target. We're seeing virtually every metrics rise like crazy when your game is available beyond the mobile phones. Things like average session duration, it's a big one, session length, session depth, session interval, and all this together is increasing your ARPU and ultimately your product's lifetime value. So how do we explain that? Releasing on like those big boy machines really give old and young players the sense of like I'm playing a real mature legit games, which in turn kind of like increase their willingness to spend. It's not like their mom's match 3 games anymore, right? It's like the big boy machines. And I actually have an anecdote to share. I heard from a friend working on one of those big Chinese IPs that they noticed that their cross-platform gamers playtime is much, much higher than the pure mobile players only, right? But those cross-platform players, they tend to spend most of their time on PC or console. But those same players, they will spend much more when they're playing the mobile version than they do during the big screen play sessions. So we can only assume why. There's less friction for payments on mobile. Maybe it's more impulsive. They can do it during the busy day to relieve some pressure. It allows them to regain control on their life, or like buying yourself a small treat. The point is, there's a very positive feedback loop for the developer. Both platforms, they work in tandem, and they're very, very extremely important. So you might be thinking it's all good and well, but I'm not Tencent, and in this economy, like I don't have the ability to think about making more money. I'm in the business of saving money, right? Can I make cross-platform games for cheaper? I would say no. For those of you who developed on Android and iOS, you know that every additional platform that you build for increase your costs. There is just no way around it. But if you already have a successful mid-core or hardcore game, it really doesn't hurt to hire a team like mine or others to at least assess the feasibility and the costs of releasing cross-platform. Because there is a very, very strong upside that we know that nothing is more expensive in mobile gaming today than brute force user acquisition. I know that the costs to reach a paying American audience have skyrocketed, and it feels a lot more random these days because UA is really not a given. So here's how you can use PC to reduce your UA costs. If you use PC as a test bed before moving to mobile, and if you cater to a community that you fully understand, you can fully capture it, then this will provide like near free marketing and organic user acquisition forever for this IP. If you make sequels, movies, TV shows, this community will follow you absolutely everywhere. In 2025 and beyond, community building must be at the core of the business strategy, in my opinion. Kids these days, they don't fall for ads. They trust people like them, YouTubers, streamers, and there's more online coverage on PC, both from the press and from those streamers. It's much easier to build a following. And even if your game fails eventually, your core audience, they will keep an eye on you for the next games that you make. So you're building not only an audience for the game, but also for yourselves as developers. And the pipeline for this free user acquisition is super simple. You post some footage of your game, get players excited. They will talk about it in their own communities. And if it really gets the community going, it will pop viral everywhere. But what I'm always telling my teams is that you cannot expect your game to go viral if it doesn't first blow up the community that it was made for. And I can't emphasize this enough. To build for a community, you must understand them deeply. What ticks them, what makes them respond, what they care about. And if you can't do it yourself, that's fine. You find someone already on the inside, an important pillar of this community, and just hire them, right? So I want to zoom back a little to get practical. I have 8 takeaways for you, crystallizing my point of view. One slide for each. Let's go. So first, let's get this out of the way. Technically, PC is a very easy platform to develop for. You probably already develop on a PC. There is a small checklist for you, but very importantly, don't take performances for granted. The vast majority of Steam players are playing PC games with the equivalent of a mobile gaming chipset. And the majority of PC developers are maybe unintentionally cutting themselves off from a huge chunk of the audience. So just be mindful of the UI, the UX, the huge array of monitor and ratios, the keyboards and controller configurations. And very importantly, don't be afraid to charge for your game. A free game on PC, at least, it's like a free sushi. You don't expect it to be very good. And if you have the money to afford it, you probably won't risk it. Second, you have to understand those underlying social dynamics. There's one good thing is that players talk a lot with each other, but the bad thing is players talk a lot with each other. Those games become part of the player's digital identity and social status on Steam and Discord. It's visible to their friends and it's used as a conversation starter. And all of this adds a social dimension that mobile gaming can lack sometimes. A lot of players are multitasking as well. When they chat with their friends, they will start a game in the background, chat over it, play together. I'm 33. I do that with my best friend all the time. But you have to be careful that you should not ignore community expectations. This specific community that you're building the game for, it's like shooting yourself in the foot. Doing okay is not enough anymore, at least in the current economy. You really must go above and beyond. So I always say that if you underpromise, players will not care, and if you underdeliver, you'll be a laughing stock. So the only solution is to overpromise and then overdeliver. Third, don't misunderstand Steam's algorithm for discovery. They're not there to promote your game. They have their own agenda. They don't know if your game is good. They want two things from you and two things only. One, they want to bring more people to their platform. And two, they want to make everyone spend more money. So if a player will see your game and bounces off of it, your algorithm score in some ways will go down. And that's where community building is super important. You have to focus on only bringing your potential buyers to your Steam page and only them. If you bombard the internet with low quality ads, it will just burn through your discoverability. It just doesn't work. Fourth, there used to be this implicit hierarchy that mobile games were seen as lesser, and it's mostly gone, especially with the younger generation. They don't care. They don't care what platform it's on. But respect in the PC space is something that is earned. You need to be authentic. You need to take your audience very seriously. And I would say, especially if they're younger, they want to be treated like adults. If you remember yourself when you were 14 years old, remember your favorite shows or favorite games, they were most likely telling stories that didn't take you for an idiot, right? Maybe your family or teachers or the ads on TVs were kind of like, talking down to you. But those shows that were your favorites at this age were the ones that were taking you seriously, talking to you seriously. Hyper casual games really fit in the gaps of a busy life. You have a busy life, you have a few moments to play. That's the moment you will play your hyper casual games. Casual games will fight for the scattered attention in short bursts, but mid-core and hardcore players will intentionally seek those immersive experiences where they can disappear for hours. It requires a fundamental shift in the pacing and the engagement philosophy. PC gamers will expect games to be long-term possessions. They will be able to return years later. So you have to consider how your game will age and whether it offers lasting value beyond the quick sessions. We see that most of the games nowadays, they're 6, 8, 10 years old, and people just keep playing those older generations games. So you really have to think about that when you're building a game. Seventh, one before last, you have to reconcile with this completionist culture that PC gamers often approach game with a completion mindset rather than just a casual engagement. It might require you to add some depth, some secrets, progression systems that are not necessary for mobile success. And I would say that lore, text-based stories, it's cheap to make. It's extremely cheap to make, but it's really invaluable because this text will be food for player creativity. And that's very important for this last one. Hardcore player community involvement goes beyond the casual gaming passive consumption model. They will want to live the game beyond the screen, right? Some will express their creativity by creating this UGC, the user-generated content. Some will cosplay as your character. They will be creating media that you didn't plan for. But to enable this behavior, you need to give them materials, characters they're designed to be cosplayed with the outfits that are easy to reproduce at home. Relatable stories, that talks to them in their daily lives. There's desirable traits. Each community, each culture have different traits that are desirable. Replicating those in your games can be a good way for people to identify or attach to characters. Intriguing relationships, all these kind of things. And that's why I'm saying that It's your job to give them materials for them to identify and appropriate the universe of your game. It's challenging, but it's really inevitable. And I have my reason to believe that it could be one of you here that unlocks the new chapter of the game industry. And I have my reasons. So we're getting into the philosophical part of the talk, right? It's my predictions for the next big thing and for the next year. So the next big thing, the next big game will be cross-platform. People will not ask where it's available, but they will ask where is this not available. The next big thing will be hyper social around a fun core, and it will be accidental social media, right? It's a game around a really fun gameplay core. Doesn't have to be very innovative, but that's where people will gather and use as social media. The next big thing will be unapologetically weird and buggy. It will be a very authentic Gen Z experience built by probably an unknown studio, a crazy founder, zero experience. We're seeing this more and more nowadays. The next big thing will be a cultural mainstay. My generation, as I was saying, I'm 33. We had MTV and bum fights and underground cartooning and Tony Hawk Pro Skater. But there's really nothing that unites the 20-something Gen Z. And this game, that is the next big thing, will be it. We can look a bit further beyond the next few years. I do believe that gameplay will completely prevail over graphics. It's a generation that grew with terrible graphics, grew up with Roblox, Minecraft. And so they would choose games that are irrelevant of their visuals. They will privilege gameplay, fun, and the social aspect of it. I think that platforms will fully disintegrate or merge, if you want. The gap between mobile, PC, console will be less and less relevant if players slow their investment in hardware because they don't care about the graphics that much. We'll really see like a merging between all those platforms. Gaming investment will pace up again, and fragmentation will accelerate. Right now, we're seeing a lot of private equity. We're seeing a lot of IP valuation, large gaming corporations that are divesting their least successful IPs, creating smaller studios, and that's refragmenting the industry. And finally, I think that gaming will be the big arena of media empires. Like the big Murdoch news empire, the Hollywood, the Bollywood. Everyone will start investing and harvesting those gaming IPs. So yeah, on my side, I've been there, done that. So I'd be happy to help. I can help support publishers, investors, big studios with the due diligence, evaluation, proposal, those large-scale fixes. But also have a team of creative director, technical directors, and art director with 10 years or 20 years of experience. And together we can help you build this studio of tomorrow. So all right, thank you very much. We have a little bit of time for questions, so don't hesitate. I'm seeing a few in the chat, so maybe I can start with that. I can start with Alice. You want to put it on screen? Right. Alice Ludovica is saying, hey, Alexis, please shed some light on how are the expectations and preferences of Steam users evolving comparing to those of mobile gamers as the gap between platform narrows? I don't think it's changing overall. I think we're seeing that the gameplay, as I was saying, is becoming the most important thing. And it really means that whatever platform you're building for, you have to think that you're not building experiences that can only be played with a touchscreen, for example. That you're building experiences that are simple, understandable by everyone, and that someone that's from the depth of Cambodia or the middle of New York City understands the cultural aspects and the iconography and all those kind of things. So we're seeing that the gap narrows. That at the same time we're expanding the reach of users, and so you have to think about all that. Sayak Mitra is saying, what future trends might further blur the line between mobile and PC gaming? I think it's really hard to predict the future, especially with the current economical situations. But we're seeing that people have less and less money to spend on entertainment. If they're spending entertainment, it will be on something that they really care about. So there will be less exploration and more reinforcement in accepted products that they already fan of. So we're seeing that. But at the same time, when times are dire, people want escapes. So they don't want something that reminds them how terrible the situation is. They want some more colorful games. They want something that's more positive and charming in some ways. we're seeing a huge uptick into cozy games, cozy music, all those kind of things. So I think those are the trends that we see both on mobile and on PC gaming that are just like the same, and it's really just the togetherness of those platforms. Hannah Weber, in what ways can mobile developers best utilize Steam achievements and leaderboard systems to enhance player engagement when bringing their games to PC? I'm a huge fan of leaderboards. I think it's the cheapest, most efficient way to create engagement, and good thing is that it's optional. So if you care about the leaderboard, if you're a very competitive player, you will use it, and if you're not a competitive player, you will not use it. So this kind of optionality really caters to like a big audience, and that fits for everybody. So I'm a huge fan of those optional systems. Optional social, optional competition, optional collectionists systems, those kind of things. Yeah. And Steam achievements in general are more on the completionist side of things. So I think leaderboard achievements are very deep for different type of players in general. Mason Richards, thoughts on BlueStacks? I'm not super familiar with BlueStacks, so I don't want to comment on stuff I'm not 100% sure about. Meihua, what about cloud gaming or devices such as Steam Deck? What challenges do they pose on their own besides stereotypical PC games? Yeah, cloud gaming, I'm a huge fan of it. I don't know if it's going to have the penetration that we expected or hoped 10 years ago. I think most of the technical challenges have been solved, and now we're on physical challenges. Are you close enough to a server? Is your connection good enough to play those games? So cloud gaming can kind of like blur the lines, as we were saying. But I really think that the future experiences will not need cloud gaming, that you'll be able to play them on, HTML5 or on like a very small, less powerful devices. We're also seeing more efficient and cheaper devices than ever. So I really think that, people will play on anything, and cloud gaming will not be the one solution. Tusif Hassan, what are the biggest technical challenges when porting mobile games to PC? I don't think there are many technical challenges. It's more the social aspects, the UI aspects, UX aspect, those kind of things. But if your game runs on mobile, there is absolutely no reason that it should not run on PC. And you don't have to make it more beautiful or pretty or anything. As I was saying, PC gamers play with stuff that is basically a mobile chipset. So you really don't have to worry too much about it. Giulia Bianchi from Bad Seed is asking, at the moment we're in a mobile gaming segment, but I want to understand any legal or publishing challenges unique to launching games on Steam that mobile developers should be aware of when transitioning to PC. I think there was a lot of fear maybe 10 years ago that your game will be considered a copy and you will be sued and stuff like that. That's not really happening. So I don't think that there is any legal challenges that are different that you would have on mobile. There are exactly the same rules on a platform like Steam than there are on a platform like iOS, and less rules. I would say you can put nudity, you can put not safe for work stuff on Steam that you would not be able to do on mobile platforms. So I guess fewer legal challenges, definitely different publishing challenges, not lesser, but different. If you're working with a publisher, they will take care of that for you. But I strongly suggest that you self-publish. Why? Because if you understand your audience and you understand your community, you can talk to this community yourself. And players, they appreciate the authenticity of a developer talking directly to them. So yeah, I don't think there's that many challenges. Olivia Thompson, how does the nature and volume of player feedback on PC platform like Steam differ from what developers typically encounter in the mobile space? There is a lot more feedback on PC. I would say detailed feedback. You have to know about it. You have to be aware of it. You have to listen to it, very importantly, but you don't have to listen to the solutions that players will offer. I always heard that players are always right when they're complaining about something. They're always wrong when they're offering a solution. So you only know what is the solution that is correct for your PC, for your game. Sorry. But you have to listen to them. And the volume, yeah, it requires basically a full-time community manager. And if you have a lot of feedback, players care. If players don't care, they don't leave feedback. So any feedback is good feedback, really. All right. I think that's it for the questions. If there is anything else, like feel free to send a message in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer. Otherwise, I think we can stop here. If you have any questions, feel free to write me an email, write me on LinkedIn, and yeah, I'll be very happy to help you guys. Thank you so much.